Okay, everyone. So yeah, we've got, it looks like our house is full here. I'm sure there'll be a couple more moving on, but yeah, it's August 26th, just about 10:30 in the Eastern, 8:30 where I am. Some more news out today. Obviously, there's lots of positive news here as people kind of await for financing and people await, drill campaigns, etc. But I think that we want to make clear to people as we try to communicate with the market that just because we haven't started those does not mean we were standing still. There's a lot of very positive news that's developing coming out of Fathom here in the last couple of weeks. Ian and I chat, and this is kind of what I said to him, and that kind of fundamentally my understanding of Gochager is fundamentally different than it was at the end of the last drill campaign, and that's a pretty exciting and positive thing to be able to say without a further drill campaign to kind of layer on top of that. I'll hand it over to Ian here. This is going to be a bit more kind of free flowing than previous webinars. Right? We have some structured questions and try to make sure I get them ahead of time. This one is going to be a bit more spontaneous. Ian's just going to walk us through today's news release. And again, I think it's a very positive thing. There will be questions, and I really do, precisely because it is a bit more spontaneous this time around, encourage everybody, please, if you have questions, type them in. I'll make sure to insert them. If you've got the chutzpah to take the mic yourself, we can probably do so in an orderly way. But yeah, I will make sure there's time at the end for questions. We do have a bit of a tighter timeline today, so our classic kind of 75-minute, 80-minute conversation will be half that today. We can have a hard stop on today. Disclaimers, classic ones here as always. Forward-looking statements, blue sky statements here are going to be made. This is up to you to do your own due diligence, you do your own research, and we'll make sure to have a full disclaimer in the notes on the video when we post it up on YouTube, which will be posted. Which segue here, this is going to be recorded. So just be aware that, there's a potential for you or if you ask a question, for that to show up on a public video. Otherwise, like I say, August 26th, news out today. Fathom Nickel extends geochemical footprint of the historic Gochager Lake deposit area by up to 25 times. Lots of details in this one, lots of really great sort of kind of above grounds evidence in terms of what's starting to emerge here in terms of size, scale, potential, and scope. And I think rather than me spending too much time talking about it, I think there's the value here is let's get Ian kind of in the hot seat, so to speak, and we'll get Ian to just kind of, like I said to him, do your level best, Ian, to do kind of the layman's introduction to what these results are and their significance. I think we'll take a couple opportunities if it presents itself to do a little bit of Geo 101, as maybe we've talked about informally, starting to try to help people educate so they can interpret these things on their own and not just rely on other people's interpretations. But Ian, maybe I'll just stop here and let you take it away. And maybe why don't you walk us through what this news release means, its significance, the evidence you have to back it up, and kind of how this evolves your understanding or our collective understanding of Gochager and sort of the secrets that it's hiding.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Matt, and thanks for all those attending. I think it's important to just sort of back up very, very briefly here. We knew about this deposit. It was drilled in 1966, 1968. It was smallish tons and not really terribly attractive grade. But within that, we know that there are much better pockets of higher grade material that I think previously was missed. And the fact that we didn't have the historic data, that data is essentially gone. So we went back to school, so to speak, and with our just over 5,000 meters of drilling and 16 holes, I think our learning curve has just been parabolic. And one of the things that has really popped out, and we talked about this the last time, is through our multi-element analysis of drill core and really pulling apart the gabbros, the mineralized gabbro versus the not mineralized gabbro. And what we have at Gochager, which is kind of unique, is our gabbros have a high chrome content. And so that's pretty significant because gabbros typically don't have as much chrome as, say, a more ultramafic rock. So our gabbros are unique, and this chrome signal, we can utilize this. And so having recognized this in drill core, what we were doing out there in June, and, again, just a little bit of a disclaimer here, this image that you see on the top left, this is PXRF. And you have to appreciate when you put the PXRF on a chip sample or on a rock sample, you're just dealing with a specific point. It's not an overall average of what that rock contains. Because if you put the PXRF immediately on a piece of pentlandite, your nickel number is just going to go boom. It's going to be very, very high. So I really want to emphasize that. So this image on the top left, we were out there in June, and I can't think of the exact number of chip samples, but they collected a bunch of chip samples from outcrop, brought them back to the camp, did the PXRF analysis at night, and the results were telling us, okay, we have a lot of chrome in variable textured gabbro away from the Gochager Lake deposit. And I think the last time we did talk about this being a slightly more ultramafic rock, so you expect high chrome values. And you can see the ranges here. The bright colors are obviously the very, very high chrome numbers. But in a gabbro, anything that's sort of north of 250 ppm chrome, we're finding this to be kind of our lower threshold. So anything above that, this chrome in gabbro starts becoming very, very interesting. Now, this image on the right-hand side, this is what was in the press release this morning. This is the rock assay data. So this is the stuff that we got back from ALS, and the chrome values, again, I mentioned 250 ppm. So anything over and above 250 ppm chrome is unusually high for a gabbro. So you can see that, even these greens and the yellows, these are all variable textured gabbros and gabbros that we've recognized in outcrop away from the historic deposit. And again, they have chrome in them. So we feel that that's a very, very positive thing. And if you do recall, the last time we got together, there was some mineralization in some of these outcrops, and we have nickel tenors removed from the Gochager Lake deposit in outcrop that are comparable to what we're seeing at Gochager. So this, when we talk about expanding the footprint, this is what we're talking about. We have the same rock type up to 700-800 meters away from the historic deposit. So that being, out in this particular area here. So just, again, this is the chrome. This was in the press release this morning. And so we talk about this area, this footprint. So this is what we have shaded here in light gray. This is where the historic deposit is. The very, very bright magentas, these are very, very high chrome. And on the right-hand side, this is magnesium. So we're getting coincident high magnesium and high chrome. And we think, this particular linear feature that we're seeing here, this is telling us that we've got something subsurface that is more than likely mafic to ultramafic in composition. I just put this yellow circle in here because we did talk about the one sample that was 1,650 ppm nickel. It's occurring over here. So you can see that we have these clusters of chrome, coincident, not so much magnesium here. So, just a comment on that. So we got lower magnesium, but we have high chrome. So this is probably more mafic. This is be a gabbro as opposed to something that is potentially more ultramafic. So you can see that the very high magnesium here, the very high chrome, that's coincident. We have another zone developing up here where we're getting coincident chrome and magnesium in soils. So these are indications. Chrome and magnesium are the key pathfinder elements from mafic to ultramafic rock.
Well, if I may interject there, Ian, sorry. So again, I think that you were just at the end there, like I say, the summary that I was looking for, that this is this pathfinder element. This is what's critical about chrome, is that it's almost a twofold thing where when you see elevated chrome, that's where you know that you're in this container rock. And then, so not until, and again, like you correct me where you have to, Ian, but so the nice thing, or the kind of the funny thing about Gochager is that this container rock itself is plenty interesting. But within this, like I say, I've kind of latched on to the language you've used previously about this playground, that you see chrome as a pathfinder that can kind of with confidence know that we've expanded our playground to these bounds where there's elevated chrome. And then within those, you have your opportunities for your high grade shoots. Is that a kind of a fair synopsis?
Yes, yes. So that's a very, very important fact. And thank you, Matthew, because we're the container rock is fantastic, but it's the prize within the container rock, this being these zones of elevated semi-massive to massive sulfide breccias, lenses, veins, chutes, whatever you want to call them, because we know that the disseminated mineralization and the more massive mineralization, that's the same stuff. That is in there, and it's been mobilized, it's been moved around inside the container rock. And when it gets concentrated, this is where we're getting our higher grade section. So to Matthew's point now, so if we're feeling pretty confident with this expanded footprint, our playground has expanded enormously. And when you look at things like, now we're looking at nickel in soils, and I've got copper in soils here. And so again, this linear feature, this is 600 meters in strike, where we have over and above the 98th percentile of nickel in soils. And a very positive thing is copper is coincident with this. And why I'm bringing in copper. Copper is this, chalcopyrite, for instance, that's a sulfide mineral, and pentlandite is our nickel sulfide. But these magmas have inherent nickel cobalt in them. So it's important to recognize that, okay, the fact that you're getting copper coincident with this, that means that there's sulfur in this potential ultramafic unit that we're suspect is subsurface below the soil anomalies. So, and then again, just a comment on the nickel, these magmas, they have nickel in them inherently, these gabbros, but anything over and above sort of 500 ppm nickel, we know that is sulfide nickel. That is nickel that's been introduced. This magma has been contaminated with sulfur, which is a positive thing. So when we're seeing, we're the upper percentile values, we have numerous samples that are well over 500 ppm and up to 600 or 1,650 ppm. So this is all, very, very, very positive. And then, Matthew and I were talking about this linear feature is somewhat unusual to see this in a typical soil survey. What is controlling something that is so linear? And I asked Vanessa about this, and she said, yeah, this is kind of interesting, but we had 3 different people sampling these lines at 3 different times, and all of these samples in this linear feature did not go to the lab all in one batch, but they went to the lab in 2 separate batches. So, I waving my arms here a little bit, but if the fact that it's so linear and you can sort of trace it all the way back towards Gochager, is it potentially a dike? Is it some other sort of feeder of something that's bringing in this, mineralized mafic, ultramafic rock? Or is this more ultramafic out here? We really don't know. And I'll get to the prospecting in a minute, but, we need to go back out here and ground proof this. What is hanging around these very, very enriched soils? Are there outcrops? Are these outcrops mafic? Are they ultramafic? This is something that we'll be doing in the very near future.
And if I may interject here again, Ian, this is one thing, if we're trying to talk about the most cogent points or most relevant points of the news release, excuse me. I mean, look at the size of the corridor that's been opened up there, right? I mean, we've discussed publicly, Ian and I, that this thing is open along trend, north to the north and south, or to the north, southwest and northeast sort of thing. And I mean, again, Ian talks kind of waving his arms. I mean, lots of companies say open along trend, open at strike, right? and lots of companies maybe even come out and say we've extended our corridor, right? But you look at the grades, and their core exploration area remains the highest grade geochem sampling, and the rest are just sort of kind of reducing in grade emanates outwards. When you look at what is happening here in this corridor, you have it's like you say, it's geochem work, so it's let's get the drill bit on there and find the truth of the matter. But you have long intersections, like 3, 4, 5 kilometers along strike now, or along this corridor, and you talk about that potential dike there to the north or to the northeast. I mean, that's those grades, the size and grade of that, it kind of exceeds historical Gochager. Is that, again, kind of a fair statement?
Yeah, well, that's very, very interesting. Is we're seeing the nickel and the copper and the cobalt. Right? I don't have the cobalt here, but the values seem to be a little bit higher in soils away from the historic Gochager. We are careful about our soil sampling in and around there because we did do some drilling, and Gochager itself, there's a bit of a swamp, so there was a lot of stations in there that we couldn't collect the data. But you're absolutely right. Particularly this signal off to the west-southwest. I mean, much stronger nickel, copper, cobalt than what we see in and around Gochager Lake itself. So we don't know ultimately what is out here, but very, very excited about. We've got a much bigger area to go hunting. So this is the real sort of positive takeaway, I think.
Yeah, that upper limits matter, right? The upper bounds. What is the blue sky potential of a deposit? I mean, these things matter, right? Small deposits just logically don't go as far. So this, there's work to be done. Drill bit has to really prove this thing up. But the fact that this scale has it's this. I mean, this, if we call this news release sort of the before and after, the scale and potential that we've discovered now today, if we call this today, this news release, is much larger than it was yesterday, right? I think that's in terms of kind of microcap explorers, you can't ask for much more. Obviously, my bias here as a Fathom guy, but yeah, to me, this is a very, very positive, as good as you can get in terms of above ground sort of above ground developments.
Yeah. This known deposit, it's really developing into something much more interesting, and again, with which the blue sky that you mentioned, Matthew, it's just this known thing that's been sitting in the ground since 1968, and now look, we've really moved the needle on this thing, and that's something I just hope resonates with shareholders and with interested people, is just the work that we've done to move this thing and to open up potential. And yeah, again, when you look at some of these linear features, if that's 600 meters of and this is a forward statement here, but if that is 600 meters of mineralization subsurface, wow, that could be pretty interesting, couldn't it? Yeah, so part of the soil sampling, and then I mentioned the chrome and the chip sampling, and again, PXRF, just caution statement here. It's an indication of what's going on in the rock, but we're seeing pretty good correlation, PXRF and our drill core, with our mineralization. So there's a degree of confidence in what we're doing with the PXRF. I mean, it gives you raw data, but we treat it as PXRF data. So when the Gochager footprint is this, it's difficult to see, but there's a red polygon here. And what we've done is just projecting the mineralization that we know exists in the historic deposit, from what do we, 50 meters. So any mineralization above 50 meters, we've projected it to surface. And this red polygon. And all these squares, these are areas where we did the chip sampling and we zapped it with the PXRF. So we've really expanded the footprint in outcrop. So that's a very positive thing. These again, another caution here, these small dots, these are where we think the historic drill holes were placed. in 1968, 66 through 68. So, the concentration is in and around here. But, again, the fact that there's drill holes, some of these drill holes, knowing what we know now, we put the borehole EM down there and says, hey, there's something very, very conductive off hole, and they were drilling vertically. We know that these are vertically inclined chutes of mineralization. So again, the message here is just expanded footprint with the PXRF. And we did, do some prospecting on the outer limit here in the orange polygon. So we've got some good indications here of elevated nickel copper sulfides. So this image here is just to, again, sort of when we talked about the expanded footprint, this is what we're basing this on. And again, just so the same image again, but this rectangle here represents the area that we've prospected. So we haven't done any prospecting along this 4.6 kilometers outside of this square. We haven't been over here to see what's going on with all this very, very high nickel in the soils. We haven't done it here and we haven't done it there. Now that we have a camp, our camp is complete. It's over here in the area of Weaver Lake. Again, another important point, this is wide open. We need to do more soil geochemistry. We need to do more soil geochemistry here. And now that we've got our camp, boots on the ground, we can easily do the necessary follow-up prospecting. And in the press release, we did talk a little bit about how this footprint is corresponding with some of the historic VTEM mag. This survey that was flown in 2008. There was zero follow-up post the flying of that survey. We have done a lot of work with that data. These contours underneath, this is a magnetic trend. So the reduced to pole total magnetic intensity. So we have a magnetic high here. We have a magnetic high here, and it corresponds very, very well with areas of increased nickel in the soils. And, by nature, if there's pyrrhotite, you're typically possibly going to get an elevated magnetic signal, and the pyrrhotite and the pentlandite are occurring together at Gochager. So that's encouraging. And we think that this down here is potentially the dreaded sulfidic iron formation, but based on the chemistry and the soil sampling, we don't think this is sulfidic iron formation. We think that this is probably indicative of an iron-rich rock, and the iron-rich rock being a mafic, ultramafic rock. And the other interesting thing here too is you can see that there's a distinct break in this trend. So this is almost like if you can imagine this thing being once upon a time a single liniment, but we've had some structure and it's now essentially been pulled apart, and the Gochager deposit is sitting right in this potential pull apart feature. And outside of this particular image, we see this same trend. We see these breaks along the same magnetic trend, 3-4 kilometers further to the northeast. So again, we're just moving the needle here in terms of our education, and this is, I think, very, very positive. This particular image here, I just wanted to show. Okay, so we gridded the this is copper underneath, and the red circles are illustrating areas where we have chrome coincident with the copper. And again, you can see that there's a pretty distinctive trend through here. This is this other one that we have slightly to the north, and we have some isolated pockets of interest here where chrome and copper are coincident. And we've got multiple images of this where we've done this kind of stuff internally, where we're looking at where nickel occurs coincident with chrome and things like that. And getting into a little bit of the sort of the machine learning, and here again, credit to Dr. Peter Lightfoot, who's helping us out with this. So he's sort of put it into the blender here, if you will. And what we're trying to do is isolate where we have magnesium and chrome occurring coincidentally. So this being to highlight where we have the potential of mafic to ultramafic rocks based on the soils. And these red circles, these are areas where we have elevated copper in the soils. And the takeaway here would be the bright colors underneath. This is where we're having a mesh of magnesium and chrome, suggesting the mafic to ultramafic host rock. We do have some elevated copper values occurring coincident along these particular trends. There's a dot in here. There's another one up there. You can see the copper highlights are actually a little bit hidden in this particular grid. Again, the mag feature, and I put these dashed lines on here, this potential pull apart feature, the Gochager deposit being right in here. And, as I said to Matthew earlier, I think this particular image here is, I keep going back to this, and this rectangle, this is the area that was flown in 2008. I don't have our property disposition, but it sits, essentially down here like this relative to the area that was flown in 2008. Mall Lake is down here. This is the location of the Gochager Lake deposit. This dashed line, this is an interpretation that we did very, very early in 2022 when we first optioned into this, looking at this mag data. And using mag, we've done what's called sort of a lithostructural interpretation. And we've interpreted that there's a potential thrust fault system that works its way from this very northeast corner through the area that was flown in 2008, and it exits down here. And these yellow polygons, this is the folks that did this, a husband and wife team in New Zealand. They said, okay, well, look, based on our interpretation of the mag data, we think that these yellow polygons are high priority exploration targets. Well, their targets 8 and 9 are northeast and southwest of Gochager Lake. Well, guess what? 8 would be this area, and 9 would be this area. So we've validated these high priority exploration targets now with soil geochemistry. So that just brings our confidence level up and our optimism with respect to getting these things to the drill ready stage as quick as possible. And the fact that Gochager 8, 9, 10, 11, and 1 through 5 are occurring so close, this interpreted thrust, this is a beautiful conduit for these magmas to work their way up through the crust. And before I forget, I don't have an image that's going to back this up, but again, with discussions with Dr. Peter Lightfoot, he's taken the rare earth elements that have come out of our rock geochem and our soil geochem, and he's looked at the what does the sort of the rare earth elements tell us about our magmas. Well, one conclusion is the norite, the gabbro, the variable textured gabbro, and what we call the bad gabbro, they have a common source. They're all common. And we sort of are speculating the same thing now about Mall Lake, 10 kilometers to the southeast, a common magmatic source. But what's really interesting with what Peter's done with the rare earths is he said, Ian, this is a very good thing. This gabbro is really messed up. It has gone through some very, very significant crustal contamination. And he went so far, he said, when I look at the level of crustal contamination, it's akin to Norilsk. It's akin to the Thompson and Raglan, where these magmas have undergone this very, very necessary crustal contamination. So again, I could go on for hours, but I don't have hours here this morning. I just think the level of understanding, going back to school, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, Humpty Dumpty being the historic Gochager Lake deposit, and in the process, finding zones of semi-massive to massive sulfide that are running 1 to 2%. The borehole EM picks these things up beautifully. Along with all of this, we know that the very good zones are very, very conductive. So we've just developed what we think is a very, very good exploration methodology, if you will. And we started with the drilling and the borehole EM, and now we've come back to typically what you do first, the surface work. And given these results, and given the 22,000 hectares, and given that we know there's another deposit another occurrence 10 kilometers to the southeast, we just think there's tremendous potential here at the Gochager Lake deposit.
Yeah, there's a
project.
There's a couple of threads there that I want to pick up on here, and of course, cognizant that we do have a bit of a 10-minute hard cap here, I'd say, folks. So again, just a reminder here before I jump into my thoughts that any questions you have, please type them in, and I'll make sure that we have time here. But just trying to be cognizant of the time here today, a little bit more than usual. A couple of comments, though, if you don't mind, Ian, just in terms of kind of trying to respond to your thoughts here. First of all, this left-right, just make sure that you have the scale there, right? The key that the left-hand fault zone is I think it's 8 kilometers, right, versus the 1 kilometer scale. But as Ian shows, though, there are this fault zone sort of interpreted potential targets along the fault zone that was built prior to the geochem sampling. And so what I kind of think is neat is there is a decent amount of hindsight justification or confirmation, maybe is a better way to say it, of the kind of interpreted potential targets there that do coincide sort of nicely with our geochem results. Is that kind of a fair statement, Ian?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And again, it just gives us more confidence that we can go out and ground truth these particular targets. Do the surface geochem, do the prospecting, and I haven't mentioned this, but we will go out and do surface EM work over these newly defined target areas. That's just, that's the next step.
Yeah.
We've got to do that. So, I think it just, it just gives you the optimism and the confidence to go out there and do it.
Absolutely. And then do you mind just number 11, go back to slide 11 here for a second. We'll take it as there are different ones. There's one for copper, one for nickel, one for chrome, right? But it's essentially a heat map for grade. And then you can see, like he said, that Dr. Lightfoot has made this, he's layered multiple sort of data layers into this image. But again, what I think is what I was struck by having seen all of these ones, there's 3 or 4 or 5, as I say, is that there is a strong correlation. We talk about chrome as a pathfinder, that the heat maps for grade for chrome pretty nicely line up with nickel and with cobalt, with copper, right? So I thought that's one of my, like I say, layman takeaways, and please correct me if I'm off base there, Ian. But then also you talk about the VTEM sort of structures that we see here, also sort of that data layering that we talk about quite a bit, right? And the need for it, as you talked about, sort of that iterative and reiterative cyclical process of exploration. Like you say, drill bit, now we're going above ground. What I think is interesting is that we know what the historical Gochager deposit looks like on these maps. And I guess that's the point I want to make here, is that now that you backtrack and look at what your known deposit looks like, and then you go out now with these layers of data on top of each other and try to find matching or like for like sort of targets. And I think that to me also increases kind of the confidence in terms of stepping out now with the data package that we've assembled. Again, is that a kind of a fair comment, Ian?
Yeah, obviously these things are underground. So how are they expressed on surface? And this, I just can't emphasize the importance of that. What is the signal? What is the signal geophysically? And what is the signal geochemically? And they're not, that's the fascinating thing about geology. No one deposit, they're just not the same. They all have their own nuances and unique characteristics. But, without some sort of a signal, without some sort of a footprint, it just becomes increasingly difficult to go look for these. So this is the the luxury of Rotten Stone and Albert Lake. You've got known deposits. You have historic deposits. Our methodology of exploration is really improved with all due respect to the old timers back in the 60s. We have a lot more tools at our disposal now, and to have the luxury of deposits at our projects and then figuring out, what would they have looked like if you pushed, in the case of the Rottenstone, it was exposed. If you push that thing 50 meters subsurface, what would be the expression? Because you don't see it. Gochager, there are some outcrops in and around the deposit, but you see a little bit of disseminated sulfide and you go, oh, okay, well, that's nice, but it's not 3%. But we know there's 3% subsurface. So it's understanding these signals and getting a good understanding of what it is that you're looking for allows you to move things forward as quickly as possible.
Exactly. Yeah. Knowing. Yeah. Exactly. Knowing what you're looking for, knowing what success looks like, huge advantage. Maybe I think we'll probably wrap it up here, Ian, but maybe would be remiss not to touch on. I mean, Dr. Peter Lightfoot, again, don't like to drag him in too much. I mean, but he's obviously, it's hard not to be excited when you have a guy with his sort of transcripts, with his resume, with his CV attached to this project. Can you give us just a little bit of color or light on what he's been saying about this work behind the scenes?
Well, I think it's always a lot of fun having our meetings, Vanessa and Peter and myself, and he's actually a bit surprised actually that this small itty bitty historic deposit, 4 million tons of a grade of 0.3% nickel, and now it's like, whoa, there's some very, very interesting things going on here. And now there's scale. And, one of the other consultants that I work with, he says, well, don't lose sight of the fact that you've got disseminated mineralization. There are open pits that are being talked about that are using levels of 0.3% nickel as a cutoff. And of course, we do know that there's lots of lower grade, very, very big tons things that are being talked about coming into production. So, allow me to wave my arms just ever so slightly. And Peter is focused on the high grade, and we're going to be focused on the high grade. But, if you have 4.6 kilometers of strike, and just, hypothetically, if that 4.6 kilometers is potentially our container rock, and it's got a thickness of 100 meters, and we know that there's mineralization in there, well, then that suddenly becomes very, very big. That suddenly becomes very, very big, and then there should be multiple sections within that has the higher grade material. So I think, Peter's excited about this opportunity. We're excited about this opportunity, and again, just his expertise and having visited as many of these types of deposits around the world, and when he tells you that this stuff has gone through, crustal contamination equal to some of the other major nickel camps in the world, that's another very, very encouraging sign. I think you're muted there.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry, the last second little technical blip there. Yeah, it's just very much recognize that it's early days and there's work to be done, but this is just one of those positive things, and it's frustrating. I mean, it'll be kind of seeds falling on stony ground maybe as the market waits for financing news, but I just I think that people need to understand, that investors need to understand that this story continues to develop and progress in a very positive fashion, and that the work that's being done to promote success in the way that we're all interested in seeing continues to happen, and then execution is, that's what draws me to this company as an investor initially, and where I sit now is that dedication to good science. I think, Ian, last call for questions from the audience here. Just a quick run through on today's news. Do you just want to maybe summarize, or opportunity for a conclusion on your part, Ian?
Yeah, well, no, just I hope the message has come out in this news release that we're very, very excited about this. So this is we did a little bit of sort of reconnaissance soil sampling during the fall drill program last year, and we were kind of, well, yeah, these results are kind of ho-hum, and maybe it's not going to work here. But then when we followed it up and did it to this level of detail and seeing these results, that's very, very encouraging. And another point, Matthew, we're very, very encouraged, obviously, about the Trombley-Olson Nick 5 area at Rottenstone. We've got 4 square kilometers there of a multi-element soil geochemical anomaly, and we have platinum palladium in the dirt there. We don't seem to have the PGE credits with Gochager, but our best nickel soil value there was 743 ppm, and we've doubled that here. For what that's worth, we've doubled that here at Gochager with the 1600 ppm. And I guess the other encouraging thing too is people will understand soil geochemistry. There's always the thought that this has been pushed by glaciers and come from far, far away. But this particular image here, the deposit is here, and we have these areas flanking around the deposit where we know there's outcrop, and the soils are lighting up in these areas near these outcrops that we know are the right rocks, is telling us that these soil geochem results are pretty in situ. They're pretty proximal. They're giving us an idea of, it's not 3 kilometers up ice, it's right here. So that, I think, is another very, very important takeaway.
Well, no, good. I think that, again, absent of any questions from the audience, I mean, there will be more. I do have, one chat here. Just wondering, is a question from, question very exciting. Just wondering about drill hole locations. Is there anything that you could even, I guess maybe he's asking right now if there's information you can share, or maybe more of a shoulder tap, maybe for a near-term update. Excuse me. Just looking for potential drill locations based on this new evidence, Ian.
Yeah, well, we have multiple targets at the historic deposit itself. These are borehole EM targets, areas of very, very high conductivity that we haven't tested yet. But you can't help but think about, okay, well, with these elevated soils off to the northeast with this very, very linear feature, we will go and do an EM survey over top of that. We will go and prospect in that area to the southwest. And I think that these are going to be very, very near-term drill targets. And if we're suddenly finding ourselves in something that's better than Gochager, well then, we might have to switch gears a little bit and start drilling some of these other targets. So it's a nice problem to have, because we know we're going to build on Gochager. I mean, that's a slam dunk. We can build on that. But what are these other things? Are they potentially a little bit more semi-massive to massive in nature? I don't know. But we will do what's required to get those to the drill target stage as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's one thing that it almost seems like our plans are a little bit in flux now because of this, which, like you said, Ian, is a good problem to have, or a good problem to develop. That emerging evidence is maybe kicking our priority targets or causing us to rearrange our priorities, or placeholder moments for future targets, knowing that they might exceed our current ones. So that's the embarrassment of riches, so to speak. Good problem to have. But yeah, it does mean that our previously understood sort of plans are a little bit up in the air as this data continues to come in as well. So just a follow-up question from that shareholder, and then so generally focus on the proximal BHEM targets, but open to a game time decision as the other areas got explored with surface EM. Is that kind of a fair summary?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we're with the camp has been completed. We're getting ourselves structured in such a way that we're going to have this flexibility without dependency on helicopter. We can drag the drill here. We can drag the drill there. We're getting ourselves organized to have that luxury and that ability to test things and not be reliant on having to tear the drill apart and move it with a helicopter every time we want to move the drill. So we're looking forward to that flexibility, and it would appear that we now have increasing number of targets, which is a nice problem to have.
Yeah, get the camp in, get the skid rig ready to get dragged, so to speak, and those cost savings, right? I mean, just this is a line from Ian that I'll maybe again opportunity to end with, but just maximizing our odds of success. That's Ian we were having a conversation. He was quite adamant about it and quite passionate about that in terms of how we explore and the methodology of our exploration. That he's committed to going about this in the way that a junior needs to make a discovery, and then maximize our odds of building off that discovery in a high conviction, high data knowledge sort of way. Yeah, same thing. And we're out of respect to Ian here. We'll probably wrap it up. But Ian, again, maybe have you said your piece or any final thoughts again?
Hang in there, everybody. Junior exploration is not easy. But if you go about it the right way, I think the prize is worth the wait. So no, we're excited. We're excited. We're going to continue to do things the way we do things, and quite confident there'll be some good things resulting from it.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'll say thank you to Ian. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. This recording, if you're looking forward to let people know, we'll get it up onto YouTube hopefully within 24 hours, 48 hours. Otherwise, we will we'll see you again next time. Thanks for your time, Ian.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.